All right, President Trump doing his part to end the government shutdown, putting pressure on lawmakers to reopen the government ahead of a test vote today. The president posting on Truth Social, writing, quote, "We will work together in good faith to address the issues that have been raised. But we cannot have another long, pointless, and destructive shutdown that will hurt our country so badly."
Joining us now to react, Florida Congresswoman Cammack. Congresswoman, thanks for being here. You have this test vote coming up in a few hours from now. What's the latest you're hearing from your colleagues on whether you got the votes? Are the votes there?
Well, good morning to you both. And what we're hearing is that today the shutdown will end. It looks like the votes are there for the final package, which is good because we know we really don't want a shutdown, but we also don't want to see all of these ridiculous earmarks for DEI programs and gender mutilation. That's something that's been a sore spot in this appropriations process, but that has been necessary in order to get some of the Democrat votes. And so I think while we have the votes, the test vote coming up, which is the rule vote, that's where you're going to see some friction. That is over the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship in order to vote in a federal election. I do think that as of this morning, after having talked to my colleagues all through the night, I think that the votes will be there after some news coming out of the Senate that the Senate is considering getting rid of the zombie filibuster and replacing it with a rule that's already currently on their books that would require senators to actually be on the floor talking in order to engage in debate. So I think there's some forward progress. I do think the shutdown will end today, but most importantly, we've got to get the SAVE Act across the finish line.
Okay, so just to be clear, are you saying that you believe that the SAVE Act, which prevents non-citizens from voting in elections, do you think that that will be attached to this funding bill? Because if so, then the Senate has to vote on it once again, because of course that would make this bill different than what the Senate had passed.
You know, unfortunately, it's looking like the SAVE Act won't be attached to the rule on this spending package, which is honestly frustrating because Americans across the country have demanded this. Election integrity is one of the top issues that they have been calling for. And so not to have this as part of the ultimate package, it's a little bit of a frustration and a sore spot. But we recognize that shutdowns are chaos, and we want to keep the strong work going that the president has been leading on, getting our economy back on track. And shutdowns don't hurt anybody but the American people, certainly not the Congress critters up here that continue to get their pay while others don't. So I think that there is a path forward on the SAVE Act. It is frustrating that it is not going to be a part of the ultimate appropriations package today.
Okay, you mentioned a path forward, because I think a lot of our audience is watching this and thinking to themselves, what the SAVE Act provides for is that only citizens vote in elections. And the left is going to come out and say, oh, that's the law already. But we know that there is the potential out there for non-citizens to potentially vote. And that is not what the American people want. That is not what the Constitution dictates. So can you give assurances to the people watching at home right now that eventually the SAVE Act, a common sense act, will pass?
Well, you know, I was up very late last night chatting with my good friend and colleague in the Senate, Mike Lee from Utah, talking about how we could find avenues for the SAVE Act, because we just simply don't have the votes today in order to force the SAVE Act onto the appropriations process. And so what we have to do is make sure this gets across, because as you pointed out, this is a real issue for a lot of Americans. But then on the flip side, you have folks that say it's not. Well, the facts tell a very different story. 19 states currently issue driver's licenses to non-citizens. Of those 19 states, 15 do automatic voter registration when you get your driver's license. So you can see where this has become a serious place for fraud. And we know from years of watching this happen in North Carolina, Virginia, California, Illinois, New York, we have countless examples of thousands and thousands of non-citizens voting, which is problematic, particularly when you have such tight margins here in the House. And I serve with colleagues who won their race by 6 votes, 29 votes, 800 votes. Every vote matters, but it has to be cast legally, and people need to know going into the ballot box that it is going to be a valid vote, and they're not going to be canceled out by somebody who shouldn't have been here in the first place.
All right, well, we will be watching to see if the government reopens today, as you have predicted that it will, and then DHS, of course, will only be funded for 2 weeks, and then yet another battle will be waged again between
we'll be right back
Republicans
here.
and Democrats. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.